Hello there, this is Jaina. Just realized I didn't even change the episode title. Let's change that really quick because today we're talking about a lot of things, I think. But for now, it shall be called that. A very familiar word. And it will be the topic of today's episode because it's very relevant to me in my life right now. I will be making up my topics as I go because I literally don't have any plans for this episode. Like the first 50 episodes, I made a list and I checked off the episodes, but lately I've actually been going through a lot of pain and I haven't had the motivation to record at all. And due to the complexities of my mind, I haven't been able to really be myself lately. So I started antidepressants about 5 weeks ago. Needless to say, it hasn't worked, and I fear that it's actually backfired. But let's go back a year and 2 months. When I was going through my mental struggles back then, except that I was drinking copious amounts of alcohol at the same time, I started an antidepressant back then, and it was the one my mom took when she was my age, and it changed her life. I saw before my very eyes a woman transformed from someone filled with anger and angst and restless energy and low depression into a vibrant, creative, whimsical woman. The woman I try to exhibit many qualities of because I am her daughter after all. So I decided 1 year ago, I want to start that one. And for sake of discussion, I will let you know what that one is, even though each antidepressant works differently for each person. And there are dozens of them, perhaps 100 or more if you know where to look. And the one she took and the one I tried taking was Jaina. Paxil. There we go. Zoloft is another antidepressant, and I will discuss that soon, I think. Paxil. It worked for my mom, so I thought 1 year ago, maybe it'll work for me. And my hope was that if I got on it, I would feel less restless, less angsty all the time, less low and drained, and more enthusiastic. And my hope was that I would be able to drink less while after taking this antidepressant. Well, antidepressant, at least so I thought, because I suffer from a terrible bout of placebo effect all the time, and it backfired because I drank, and I decided to drink more, and I was coping with my weird feelings of the antidepressant with more alcohol, and then the amount of alcohol I was drinking really conflicted with the antidepressant, and I tilted so hard, and that was partially why I went missing in action in life. I went MIA in life itself, and I totally fucked up my job, and I lost that job, and I lost a few friends that I since regained, and life was in a really bad spot. So I said, I'm never trying these antidepressants again. I didn't even think to question my alcohol consumption at the time. So now that I'm sober, happily, almost for 6 months, well, June, July, August, September, October, November, 5 months. Oh my god. Sweet. So today is my 5th month anniversary. Yay! I like to think of it like 1 month in advance. Sometimes I tell people I've been transitioning for 5 months. Really, it's like 3.5. Anyway, numbers and I don't agree sometimes. So 5 months ago, I quit drinking. And oh my gosh. Okay. There were 2 songs playing at the same time. Both Final Fantasy. I love it that much. I'll listen to it at the same time. Twice. Thrice. I better speed this along because I do have a lot I want to tell you. I'm really opening up and like the inner workings of my heart and mind right now, and I'm not trying to play an act at all, but rather reveal like my struggles. So I wrote off antidepressants, but then eventually I quit drinking thanks to a near-death experience, and now I'm here. And 2 months ago or so, I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get back on antidepressants. Maybe they'll work a lot better now that I'm not drinking. So I scheduled an appointment, waited, got the appointment, got on Paxil, a much lower dose this time, because they started me at 20 milligrams before. Oh my god, that was disaster. So they started me at like 5 or 10. 10. They started me at 10, so I was like taking half. And for the longest time, I didn't feel anything. I'm like, damn it, I wish this would work. And then I started having really bad days. And this was about 2 weeks ago. I started really, really, really bad days. I didn't want to get out of bed. I have an inner joy. And I talk about joy a lot. I have an inner joy that's always... There's a flame, always a light, even in the darkest and most treacherous of storms. I've never lost hold of that joy. I can embrace that joy. I can use it for my advantage in many things. There are some things my joy cannot do, like making me work or making me pay bills on time. But that joy will keep me alive because I never have suicidal thoughts. I will have thoughts such as, I don't want to be on this planet anymore. But it's more like I'd rather experience another planet. Maybe people there will be closer to who I am here. And so I don't have depressive thoughts. And I do have the suicide hotline on my phone just in case I do go down that dark path. But fortunately, it's not been a thing of life or death. It's more been, do I bother giving a shit about life? And I didn't give a shit about life for about 2 weeks. And the videos I've recorded in that time were videos, those rare moments when I surfaced above those waters, such as this video, and I had enough of my inner strength and outer strength to record a fun video. So those videos are totally me. It's just all this stuff you're not seeing is when I'm trying to, I guess, forget about my pain through video games, and I've been playing a lot of Nintendo Switch. I just recorded that episode on video games. Well, yeah, because lately I've been a gamer girl, and that's been helping me so much. Because otherwise I wouldn't know what to do with myself, and perhaps those thoughts then would go down darker paths. But right now, here in this moment, I am joyful, though I am not happy. And I lack a zeal and motivation to take care of responsibilities, and that has gotten me in trouble so many times in life. So I just realized today, you see, because I don't have motivation to do things, I haven't scheduled a follow-up appointment with my doctor. So I ran out of Paxil about 5 days ago, and I haven't taken it. Oddly enough, in the past 5 days, I've actually felt progressively better and better. And I'm wondering, did the Zoloft work against me? Not Zol. Apples, bananas. Apples, banana. Okay, did the Paxil work against me? And I'm starting to think it did, so that's where I'm at right now. And that's what leads me into my venting. Wow, these are very loud roommates. I just hate where our modern medicine is right now. We have come leaps and bounds in understanding how the brain works, neurotransmitters, little brain chemicals, hormones even, but we still haven't mastered the art of the antidepressant. That's because each antidepressant works on a different area of the brain, and each area of the brain, for lack of a better term, is in control of a different neurotransmitter, and each neurotransmitter does something different. Like, dopamine is in charge of motivation. It is in charge of getting you motivated to do something because of reward. There are two types of rewards, intrinsic and extrinsic. and dopamine plays in both. Intrinsic rewards are not so much dopamine based, they're more acetylcholine based, but I'll get to that. But extrinsic rewards, such as working hard, earning a paycheck, maybe working a little bit harder, saving money, getting those things, those shiny baubles that you've always wanted. Um, Extrinsic rewards can be social. Like, I want to go out into the world to make new friends to increase my social status. That's all dopamine. And dopamine is really affected by ADHD meds, such as Adderall, Ritalin, maybe even Vyvanse, and the other one starts with a C. Not Celesta, is it? Anyway. But antidepressants don't really go into dopamine part, but they can. They can go into norepinephrine. I'm not too familiar with that one, but I believe that's like a epinephrine, norepinephrine, energy levels, I believe. There's... Boop, boop, boop. I think Wellbutrin also plays into dopamine. So Wellbutrin is not an SSRI, but Wellbutrin is good for people with ADHD, and I believe I have ADHD, or executive functioning disorder. So maybe that's the one I will request on my next appointment. I was just told I could never ever take Wellbutrin because you cannot drink at all on it. And back then that was a no-go for me. But now that I'm sober, I can pretty much have access to any antidepressant I request, because we're still figuring out my brain, my doctor and I. And she's a really freaking cool doctor, by the way. I get her through the county because I am technically low income right now. So I get a county-based doctor, excuse me, and they are not like lab coat doctors. They're like more like mental health specialists who deal with people with substance abuse, like me. Well, at least how I was, currently not abusing any substances, yay, except coffee and energy drinks. But she's a really cool woman and down to earth, and I highly recommend go to someone like down to earth, someone who deals with people with hurting raw pain, like people who come off the streets into their clinics, because they know they have a wider gamut of experience, and they have more heart, I can tell, for helping people, rather than people who get their med degree and go into doctors and they wear the lab coats and they have all the brainy knowledge, but they don't have the street knowledge, so to speak. So that's my little takeaway for this episode, is like a mental health specialist. Ours is like a mental health clinic that's paid for by the county, and they accept many types of insurance. And they don't look like a traditional doctor because they have a lot of different rehab programs and whatnot. So I purposefully jumped around in that last part because that's how antidepressants are. There's so much to learn about them, and there's really no better place to start than to try one if you feel that you could use one. And just keep in mind that things will shift quite dramatically and even rapidly when you start a new medication, especially one that changes your brain chemical structure, because your brain is adjusting and there are going to be growing pains, and do expect depression. Allow your schedule time to recover if you get into really low fatigue periods where you want to sleep all day. And I was there about 2 weeks ago. I took several naps per day for a whole week, and I felt like the shittiest human being because I felt like that wasn't my brain chemicals. I thought that was my own will, and I thought that I was de-evolving as a human being. No, I could see it clearly now. That wasn't me. That was my brain chemicals. And you are not really defined by your brain chemicals, even though brain chemicals can help you define yourself, if that makes sense. If you have a really healthy biome of brain chemicals, a healthy balance of all the necessary neurotransmitters, you're gonna have more energy to define yourself better. But it doesn't define you in itself. If you feel really good because you have a lot of dopamine, for example, one day, doesn't mean you're a really good person. It's what you do with the brain chemicals that are given to you. Pausing for a moment of reflection and deciding what I'm going to focus on next. In the future, I foresee a new type of brain scanning device that is inobtrusive, non-invasive, and it shows activities of various neurotransmitters throughout the day. Once we have that kind of technology, we can accurately prescribe neurotransmitter affecting medications. Because a lot of the suicide rate from antidepressants is due to giving you too much of one neurotransmitter that you already have too much of and depleting one that you don't have enough of. Because there is a balance, a light and dark, a black and white, a yin and yang. If you give yourself one neurotransmitter, then the other will be depleted. And I believe that serotonin and dopamine are the yin and yang. You cannot have both high dopamine and high serotonin. One will deplete the other. And that's where problems happen, I think. And this is just speculation and theorizing because I've thought a lot about this. But I think the reason I might be feeling so low is because Paxil was giving me a lot of maybe serotonin, maybe I need dopamine instead. And so the surplus of serotonin in my brain was depleting the dopamine, thus making me feel unmotivated, thus creating depression and fatigue. Which is funny because when you say depression, people think, oh, that's serotonin. Because SSRI, it has serotonin in that acronym. So people link serotonin to depression, when really dopamine has just a mighty role as well. So that's my theory. And I'm going to test it with Wellbutrin, and I'm going to share the results because I think it's important. I think it's really important that there's awareness and understanding with mental disorders. And I never liked the term mental disorder until recently because I thought it went hand in hand with like defect. I'm not a defect. I don't want a disorder. But then I broke down the word. What is disorder? Dis, like such as disarray. That's the only word with the prefix of dis that I can think of at this very moment, even though I have probably dozens of other ones that refuse to surface in my awareness. Okay, so disarray, disorder is like chaos, right? There's none of it. There's no order, disorder. The order is scattered. So I have disorders under that umbrella. My order is still there. It's just not orderly. All the puzzle pieces that I need to win at life are still there. They're just not put together. And having healthy neurotransmission is a large puzzle piece to help me go in that right direction. Something I didn't mention earlier that I really want to emphasize now. Just because you have perfect neurotransmission, like perfectly balanced brain chemicals, it doesn't mean that you're going to do good things. You have the perfect canvas and all the colors to paint with, but you have to paint the picture. It's up to you, your heart, your will. Like the core of who you are determines what you do with those. And many people might get on medications or already have perfect, like neurotypicals might have perfect brains or ideal brains, but they might do bad things with that. So just because you have healthy neurotransmission doesn't fix your problems automatically. You have to be willing to take hold of those opportunities as they're given to you. And that's what I strive to do. I haven't been taking hold of responsibilities lately, and if I may be perfectly honest and vulnerable, and even a little bit broken right now, I have lots of debt from credit cards that we were forced to use during my burnout. Fortunately, our household bills are paid, but they're only paid like as far back as allowed before the services are turned off. So, if you can imagine, they're about 2 to 3 months past due. We're still paying them every month. It's just 3 months ago. I still owe taxes for last year, and I haven't filed the taxes this year. Eek. Like I said, I'm being vulnerable here. The world needs more vulnerable people, and I'm gonna lead by example, damn it. There's a lot of things we need to buy that we haven't been able to buy, but fortunately we have food in our cabinets and in our fridge, so we are blessed in that department. And I know how to cook an amazing feast with very little cans, so, like, we're good there. I'm frugal in that department. But we do have our lavish spending stuff. Like, for example, we Jennifer and I quit smoking 10 years ago, but we replaced it with electronic cigarettes, as you know. And the cost for these little batteries and the oils and what, it adds up. I consider that a frivolous expense, even though it's satisfying our nicotine itch. Something that I will probably have to quit eventually. I'll get so tired of vaping it all the time. I'll be like, okay, put me through the nicotine withdrawal hell. If I've gone through one withdrawal or two withdrawals in the past, I can go through this one. That alcohol withdrawal was the worst hell I've ever imagined. This can't be that bad, could it? Yeah, and we have other things that we buy, so we're not exactly like disciplined in that department, largely because my wife struggles with severe depression as well. In fact, she struggles with it about 2 to 3 times greater than I do. My depression is more of like getting stuff done, and hers is more like existential, if that makes sense. Whereas I don't have those existential crises. I know who I am. I love who I am. Like, even on the shittiest day, I could smile and love my existence. Like, my wife doesn't have that. She has the actual, probably tangible depression. I have more of that anxiety and ADHD driven depression. I could drop the autism word, but I think that's way too vague for most people to understand. So just call it like a restlessness, anxiety, constant stimulation, and being hyper aware of all 5 senses at any given moment. It's something I get used to, but it's like one of those things, like a thorn in your flesh. You just forget about the pain. The pain is still there, and maybe when you like put extra pressure on the thorn, you remember that thorn is still there. Well, several times per day, up to 100 times per day, there will be various thorns in my flesh that will be pressed on, and then I'll be realizing, oh, that's right, I do have these disorders, and I have to deal with them. So my wife has pure straight depression. I have fortunately she's on an antidepressant that has improved her greatly, but she still struggles. So that means there's probably some dosage she could be optimized. Whereas I am just now starting in the brain medication. And the reason I waited so long to start this is the reason for this episode. The world of antidepressants is so fucking shitty. Like, seriously, it's so shitty. We live in a weird time where we are the product of so much technological biochemical advancement, yet we still are at rock bottom. Well, not rock bottom. A few levels up above rock bottom. We're still very low. And in the future, I foresee, like I was talking about, machines that will accurately dictate, this is how your system is running, you need this other kind of fuel. So you go to a specialist or whatever, your brain is activity is tracked, they give you a custom made concoction exactly of what you need. It might fluctuate over time, but you take this, and all of a sudden all those lackings, all those holes and gaps in your life are filled. It won't solve all your problems, but it will give you a good starting point to solve problems. And we're still a ways away from that, maybe 10 to 20 years. My honest prediction. Oh, I've grown dark. Let me scoot the monitor up a little bit closer. No, it won't scoot that much closer. There we go. I want you to see this crazy face of mine as I talk. I honestly predict that there will be a very entrepreneurial risk taker who is not extrinsically motivated by money or power or success, but intrinsically motivated and challenged to solve problems that plague hundreds of millions of people around the world. Someone who, I compare this hypothetical someone to Elon Musk, but instead of SpaceX, it will be like BrainX. And this is my valid prediction, by the way. I am dead set that this is gonna happen in our lifetime. They will test on their own brains, and then when they see promise in this brain scanning device, they will test on friends and family, which is very illegal when it comes to things of the medical sort, because the FDA and all those other organizations like you to jump through loopholes. But those loopholes are there so that they can control you, and they can control what hits the market. So this brain scanning machine is more open source. No. Well, open source, yes. More like homebrew. It's created in his garage, and he tests on friends and families and takes great risks because it's their head that he's sending whatever signal into that's bouncing back data. And in the process, he unlocks the greatest, most detailed, intricate, three-dimensional map of the human brain and its activity, both electromagnetic. No, not there's no magnets in the brain. Electrochemical. There we go. So the chemical activity and the electrical activity to gain a greater understanding of how the brain works. And in the end, he unlocks the key to mental disorder. You heard it here first. This man or woman, who I have nicknamed Sid for a very personal reason. That's a fun story. Sid, I'll call them Sid from now on, okay? Sid will, of course, grow to infamy, but he will attempt to be bought out, stifled, and snuffed. Bought out, stifled, or snuffed. By snuff, I mean people want him dead, because he has trillions of dollars in his garage, in that brain machine, and he's not using it to get rich or famous. He's using it to help others, starting with himself, because he has lots of mental disorders, and his friends and families who struggle as well. How did he figure this out? Because mental disorders are linked to creativity, which is linked to genius. Just because you're a genius does not mean you have everything together, and I hate the word genius because people think of someone who's highly successful and really smart. The greatest minds of our entire history had the greatest struggles. Neurotypicals cannot think in such a way that you and I can with mental disorders. If you have a disorder, it means you're unlocking thoughts and impulses from other parts of your brain. When you do that, when you just have a bunch of different parts working together in a very disorderly and disorganized fashion, you have thoughts and feelings and stuff that are very out of the ordinary, and it's those that solve problems and find alternate ways of doing things, because a neurotypical, someone with all their ducks in a row, won't have access to those parts of the brain, and they will have to actually try to think out of the box. Through their business powwows and brainstorming sessions, they have to try to think out of the box, whereas it comes naturally for us. That's another key point I wanted to make in this video. We are gifted. Those of us with mental disorders, we are gifted beyond belief. But what our blessing is from curses us as well. We are gifted, yet we are constantly suppressed by our own minds. So we typically have less success in the world's eyes because we don't do things according to the world's way of doing things. That's a source of my joy. That I, Jaina Jaslyn, have a mind like no other. There's no brain on this planet that's close to mine. Close, maybe, but not like it. And if you struggle with mental disorders, ideally a cocktail of them, more than 3, then you are gifted too. But your expression of that gift or gifts is suppressed. So Sid, because he is gifted and motivated intrinsically to solve the pains and woes of himself and his friends and family, creates this device and realizes, oh, there's really rich people who would want this too. This could help a lot more. So he has to go underground, and he creates this company. Let's just call it BrainX. And he finds a way to actually do what he does to help others. And he teaches a trusting few people, here, have the technology, have the instruction manual to this device, and make it better. And he, in the process, accidentally topples the world of psychiatric medication as we know it. Because this is a drumroll part. Because there is a common thread between anxiety, depression, ADHD, bipolar, even autism. And once this technology is, well, released, at least information about this technology is released, as soon as 3D mappings of the human brain are released, we will see that mental disorder is actually a very large, just think of it like a brain, okay? Picture a brain, how it has different lobes, right? Well, consider those lobes different diagnoses. I mean, we've known about these for what, 100 years or more? We know depression is depression, and everyone can agree that depression is depression, right? It's prominent, so it has its section. And then anxiety is a very, yes, we know all about anxiety. It's certainly not depression, so it gets its own center. And then all these little diagnoses have their own centers, but they're a part of the same brain. And that brain, the glue that holds all of those diagnoses together, is what Sid from BrainX finds. There's also more on this topic that is a firm conviction of mine, but it goes spiritual too. Because that glue does not stop there. The glue is also a thread that connects to something spiritual. That people with mental disorders are also connected to something that is outside of the confines of time. You're really seeing my autistic side come out right now, because you're probably going, what the fuck are you talking about, Jaina? What the fuck are you talking about? You sound crazy right now, and you're allowed to say that. I know I sound crazy, but I speak things matter-of-factly as I feel them. There was a man in the late 1800s who was an inventor of sorts, but he was a really whimsical, crazy, outlandish sort of gentleman, and I do not remember his name, though I can get it for you. Just ask, I will get it for you. Post a comment, because I'll give you the guy's name. I have the book I read it about him in, and he was a genius, and he was the inventor of the amateur ham radio. He was the first person to make it accessible to have a radio in your own home, and he created a shop, and he sold these things, and he just blew everyone's mind away. He was a genius. But he was also crazy. Just like I'm crazy. I attest to you right now, I am one of the craziest people you will ever hear speak, okay? He was crazy because he lived inside his own head a lot and had these really outlandish ideas that he talked about as if they were true because he felt them as true. I think it's safe to say he was on the autism spectrum. In fact, the book I read about him in was called Neurotribes. Great book. Neurotribes. It is a bit grimsly. It's a bit grimsly when it talks about the abuse and torture of people on the spectrum a long time ago. But it also talks about the successful people on the spectrum from a long time ago. And it's fairly safe to say that he was very likely on the spectrum based on his documented mannerisms, how he talked, how he approached people, his social life, you know, the typical shebang. One day, this guy was, His name wasn't Henry. No. Henry Cavendish was another. Read about him. One day he was at his niece's house, and she had just woken up. He was there, being his goofy self, because goofy uncle kind of thing. And she was disorderly because she had she was disorderly because she had just woken up. She was unkempt, and the phone rang. Phones were new back then. The phone rang, and without a beat, he said, Now, my dear niece. In the future, you would not want to be looking like that because from the end of those wires, they will be able to see your unkempt face. It was documented that he really, literally said that in the late 1800s. Over 100 years before FaceTime chat or video chat became a thing. In his heart, it was so real that there would be video technology that he made a proclamation that very soon people will be able to see your face. He didn't even talk about the technology itself. He talked about the effects of the technology, being able to see your face from the other end of those wires. Can you imagine? Like, computers were not even invented then. Not even the most basic of computers, and he was predicting video conferencing. And he spoke it matter-of-factly. That's why I say this thing that creates mental disorder, well, if you have enough of those lobes in this disorderly brain activated you're on the spectrum. Whether you're diagnosed or not, you might be on the spectrum if you have like a lot of these disorders. And these disorders are connected to something beyond time. I consider it magical or spiritual, whatever you want to call it. That is my conviction. And Sid, a hypothetical Sid from a hypothetical brain X, will unlock these truths, and I have a feeling it'll raise a lot of eyebrows and also attract a lot of haters. Because people without mental disorders just simply don't understand how our minds work. And that intimidates and scares a lot of people. But to us, it's just this is who we are. That's funny that I labeled this episode antidepressants when I covered enough topics that would fill 5 episodes. Because this is stuff I've been wanting to talk about for a while. I didn't expect to talk about so soon. Because I wanted to lead up to these crazy theories. If you still think I'm normal, then you are one of us. Because this is really outlandish, bizarre. Call it insane if you will. This is the brain I live with. And dealing with these things and concepts outside of time as if they were real. Because in my head and heart, some of the things, all of the things I talked about are as good as real, even if they haven't happened yet. And I can have no explanation other than that's what I feel. That's it. At the very least, it'll make for a great story. If you followed along this far, I would like to know. Because these are topics that not many people want to hear. Because they're hard to relate with. When I talk about them as if they're real, and people kind of go, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck, Jaina? Like, why do you think about these things? Why not get your life into order? Because those extrinsic things, most of the time I don't give a damn about. Like, I pay the bills because I have to, not because I want to make a lot of money. Money has no value other than to support my life. And there are times I go through depression, but never as bad as it has been in the past few weeks. I've been hurting so bad. And if you hurt, I feel for you. It's not easy going through even one mental disorder. because our world was built for neurotypicals, people who chased extrinsic rewards. It wasn't built for people whose intrinsic value was worth everything, and the intrinsic pursuit is worth a lifetime. So if you relate with any of this, just, you have a friend in me. And I found a friend in you as well. I'm gonna turn this music up. It's really beautiful. I got a copyright infringement notice from another video, and I think they took it down. That was the video on surrendering expectations when it comes to HRT and transition. Basically, any time I've played like jazz, I've gotten on one of those notices. This is the second one, so I can't play jazz as the background music anymore. That's why I'm going to stick with the Final Fantasy soundtrack, because I don't think Square Enix is a dickhead large enough to prey on little girls like me who want beautiful music while they talk, okay? So, I can't see on my end, so if the Surrendering Expectations video still shows on your end, even though it has like this copyright claim, please let me know, because I want to... It would suck to lose that video. It was a really good one. And with that, I'm gonna... there we go. It's been 42 minutes. This is crazy. I just want to say you are awesome. Keep being awesome, okay? The world needs more people like you. And don't give up hope. Remember, hope, like joy, is one of those things you can feel even if you feel defeated. It's an inner virtue. You can carry it with you everywhere. Throughout my most hopeless feeling days, I've had an abundance of hope. Carry that with you, always. Hope, joy, love. That's the end of this episode. I'm wondering if I should publish it. But then my next thought is, well, people won't watch it far enough to realize how crazy you are, Jaina. So I will publish it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some brain inspiration nuggets. And I hope it put a smile on your face, because it did for me a much needed smile after a really shitty 2 weeks. And I'm going to try Wellbutrin, and we'll see how that goes. I mean, I love my brain. I would not want to give up my crazy, creative, mad scientist self, but I want a little bit more order to, you know, survive in this extrinsic-based society. So hopefully my dopamine levels can increase a bit so I can be more motivated. Jaina's gonna do amazing things, though. That's another prediction that I know is true. I'm gonna do amazing things in the world. Just you wait and see. And by amazing things, encourage, uplift, motivate, love a shit ton of people. A metric shit ton at that. So, wait and see. This is Jazzy Jane and Jaslyn. Thank you so much for sticking around or listening to this in the background or whatever you want to call it. And I will see you hopefully tomorrow. Because if I talk to you tomorrow, that means I am feeling better still. So, here's to that. Bye.